At first, it looked like just another update in a region that's no stranger to conflict brief alerts, breaking banners, and scattered reports that most people scroll past without a second thought. But then the pattern started to change. The strikes weren't isolated anymore. The scale was growing, the frequency increasing, and the location spreading. And then came the confirmation that shifted everything. The Houthis had officially entered the conflict, launching missiles that extended the battlefield far beyond its original lines. In that moment, what once seemed contained suddenly felt regional, unpredictable, and far more dangerous. To understand why this matters, you have to look at how conflicts in the Middle East evolve. They rarely stay between two sides for long. What begins as a direct confrontation often expands through alliances, rivalries, and strategic interests that have been building for years. The involvement of the Houthis isn't just about another group joining the fight. It's about opening a new front, one that stretches the geography of the conflict and complicates every calculation being made behind closed doors. The Houthis, based in Yemen, have been a major force in their own regional conflict for years, but their capabilities and their willingness to project power beyond their borders have increasingly drawn global attention. Their missile and drone programs have evolved significantly, allowing them to target locations hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles away. So when they begin launching toward Israel, it's not just symbolic, it's operational, it's strategic, and it signals coordination that goes beyond a single battlefield. That's where the connection to Iran becomes part of the conversation. While the exact level of coordination is often debated, analysts widely view the Houthis as part of a broader network of aligned groups across the region. This network doesn't operate like a traditional military alliance. There are no formal treaties or unified command structures. Instead, it's a flexible system of influence, support, and shared objectives, and that flexibility makes it incredibly difficult to counter. As missiles begin to cross new distances, defense systems are pushed to their limits. Interception technologies can handle a certain volume, a certain range, a certain level of complexity. But when multiple fronts are activated simultaneously, the challenge multiplies. Each new launch forces decisions in real time: what to intercept, what to prioritize, how to respond. And in a high-stakes environment, even a small miscalculation can have significant consequences. For viewers in the United States, this might feel like a distant escalation, unfolding thousands of miles away. But the reality is far more interconnected. The Middle East plays a critical role in global energy supply, trade routes, and geopolitical stability. When conflict spreads across this region, it doesn't stay contained. It affects oil prices, shipping lanes, and international markets in ways that quickly reach American households and businesses. One of the most immediate concerns is the security of key maritime routes. The waters surrounding Yemen are among the most strategically important in the world, connecting major trade pathways that carry goods between continents. If missile threats begin to target ships or disrupt these routes, the ripple effects can be felt globally. Shipping costs rise, delivery times increase, and economic pressure builds in ways that are often invisible at first, but become increasingly noticeable over time. But beyond the economic impact, there's a deeper strategic question taking shape. What does it mean when a conflict expands in this way? When additional groups join in, when new fronts open, when the lines between separate conflicts begin to blur? The answer isn't simple, but history offers some clues. Conflicts that expand geographically tend to become more difficult to resolve. More stakeholders mean more interests to balance, more narratives to manage, and more potential triggers for further escalation. An escalation doesn't always happen in dramatic, headline-grabbing moments. Sometimes it's gradual. A missile here, a response there. A deployment that's described as temporary but quietly becomes long-term. Over time, these incremental changes add up, creating a situation that looks very different from where it started. What began as a localized conflict can evolve into a regional crisis, and from there, the risks only increase. There's also the human element to consider, something that often gets lost in discussions of strategy and geopolitics. Behind every launch, every interception, every movement of forces, there are people making decisions under pressure. Military commanders, political leaders, analysts, all working with incomplete information, trying to anticipate the next move in a situation where certainty is rare. And when multiple actors are involved, each with their own priorities and perceptions, the margin for error becomes even smaller. For the Houthis, entering this conflict changes their position on the global stage. It brings increased attention, increased scrutiny, and potentially increased consequences. But it also aligns them more closely with a broader regional narrative, one that frames the conflict in terms of resistance, influence, and power. And narratives matter. They shape how actions are perceived, how responses are justified, and how support is mobilized both locally and internationally. Meanwhile, for Israel, the expansion of missile threats from a new direction adds another layer of complexity to its defense strategy. It's no longer just about one front or one set of threats. It's about managing a multi-directional challenge, where attacks can originate from different locations at different times, with different capabilities. That kind of environment requires constant adaptation, constant vigilance, and a willingness to make difficult decisions quickly. And then there's the role of the United States, which finds itself navigating a delicate balance. On one hand, there's a commitment to regional allies and stability. On the other, there's an awareness of how quickly involvement can deepen. Every decision, whether it's deploying assets, providing support, or issuing warnings, carries weight. It signals intent, shapes perceptions, and influences how other actors respond. As the situation continues to unfold, one thing becomes increasingly clear: this is no longer a contained conflict. The involvement of the Houthis has expanded both the physical and strategic dimensions of what's happening. It has introduced new variables, new risks, and new uncertainties that will need to be managed carefully in the days and weeks ahead. But perhaps the most important aspect of all this is what comes next. Because in conflicts like these, the present moment is only part of the story. The real impact is often determined by how events evolve over time. Will this expansion lead to further escalation, drawing in additional groups, and creating even more fronts? Or will it reach a point where de-escalation becomes possible, where diplomatic efforts begin to take shape? Those questions don't have easy answers, but they're the ones that matter most, because the decisions being made right now by governments, by military leaders, by organizations will shape the trajectory of this conflict in ways that aren't immediately visible. For an American audience watching this unfold, it's worth paying attention not just to the headlines, but to the patterns behind them. The entry of the Houthis into this conflict isn't just another update, it's a shift, a sign that the dynamics are changing, that the stakes are rising, and that the path forward is becoming more complex. And in a region where history has shown how quickly things can escalate, that complexity is something that can't be ignored. Because once a conflict reaches a certain level of expansion, pulling it back becomes exponentially more difficult. And by then, the consequences are no longer confined to a single region, they become global, interconnected, and far-reaching. So as new reports emerge and the situation continues to develop, the focus shouldn't just be on what's happening now, but on what it represents: a broader conflict taking shape, a network of actors becoming more active, and a reminder that in today's world, even distant events can have very real impacts much closer to home.